Great to be joined by Charlie Walter of Chatterbox Bearcats. Charlie, how are you today?
I am well. How are you, Paul? Good to talk to you, man.
Doing fantastic. Great to see you. Charlie, a dedicated Bearcats fan and somebody that we're going to talk to here over the next few minutes to get his thoughts on Cincinnati and, of course, the 2024 Crosstown Shootout, which is upcoming on Saturday afternoon. Tomorrow, as most of you are probably listening to this, tomorrow at 2 o'clock, it'll be John Schifrin and Sean Farnham on the call on ESPN+. Again, 2 o'clock, ESPN+, for Xavier and Cincinnati. Charlie, this is a shootout that, as we talked about yesterday with Rick Broering on the Rebound Rundown, you've heard me probably give my thoughts at different points on different podcasts and shows throughout the week. But from your perspective, from a Cincinnati perspective, this is a huge game for the program. That goes without saying, but in particular for a program that hasn't won this game since 2018 and for a coach that has never won this game and who said that this game in his opening press conference was a priority. Not going 0-4 in this game obviously is a huge deal for him and for this team. Where do you fall on this year's Crosstown Shootout, and what are your initial thoughts on what's going to happen on Saturday?
Paul, it's the must-win of all must-wins. That's not hyperbole. That's not sensationalism. That's what it is. Because if Cincinnati loses this game, you can look at it from a micro, you can look at it from a macro perspective. Let's start with the bigger picture. It's that Cincinnati is, we all know that this rivalry has flipped, that there's something psychologically wrong with Cincinnati in this game. Like they just, look, over the last 5 games that Xavier's played, Providence, DePaul, St. John's, every team in the Big East, has Xavier gone 5-0 against all of them?
No.
Probably not, right?
No,
Probably not, right? Like every team in the Big East can take down Xavier 1 and 5 times. Cincinnati cannot do it. For whatever reason, they cannot do it. You lose 6 in a row. I don't know what to tell you anymore because you're probably not winning number 7 next year at Cintas, and a 7-game losing streak in this rivalry to a team, granted, that has made the tournament once in the last 5 years. It's not like Xavier's been Duke. It's a tough look. Let's look at the micro perspective of this. Cincinnati loses. You got Dayton up next. We saw what Dayton is in Maui. They're solid. You lose to Dayton, your non-conference best win is a road win at Georgia Tech. I think it actually has slid up to a quad 2. So, okay, we'll take that from Cincinnati. But out of the mix, I mean, your second best win's a road win at NKU. So you got nothing to stand on there. Then you open up Big 12 play with Kansas State on the road. It's Arizona, it's at Baylor, and it's Kansas at home. This thing could get ugly quickly. I don't think that's going to happen because I do think Cincinnati's good, but we don't know what Cincinnati is because they went into Philadelphia and did not look great against Villanova. They went into Northern Kentucky and struggled with NKU for a little bit until their talent just took over and CMOS started draining threes. But, I mean, look, you got to win this game. It's a home game against a quad 2 team. That's the way I'm looking at it. Take the rivalry perspective out of this entire thing. It's just a game you got to win short term and definitely long term. I need something. We've had a global pandemic since the last time Cincinnati's won this game. It's been way too damn long.
Where do you think that this game falls as far as what Xavier has done recently, what Cincinnati's done recently? Like you said, they haven't exactly lit the world on fire. But where this game is mentally for Cincinnati right now, because we can talk about matchups, we can talk about where Xavier has an advantage, where Cincinnati has an advantage. We can break all of that down. But at the end of the day, in a rivalry game like this, and that's where Cincinnati has the edge at home this year, but in a rivalry game like this, there is just something to playing under pressure and being able to win a game that has a lot behind it. Where do you kind of fall on what this Cincinnati team might be able to respond to with that this year?
I thought they had some dogs entering this season. I thought that they had players that were going to show up every single night and really get after you physically. They were going to hang around in games just with their size, with their speed, with their ability to knock down shots. And it just hasn't looked good in the last 3 games, man. Dating back to Alabama State, and then you go past that, and it's the game against Villanova, and then the home game against Howard. All 3 of those games, Cincinnati was not lighting up the world by any means. Hasn't really been the turnovers that have been killing them. It's just been an issue of not knocking down shots, sluggish basketball defensively, getting backdoored on, issues that we've seen time and time again. And then Villanova, it was just UC got taken out of their game. I think Cincinnati's at their best when they're pushing pace, when Mitchell's finishing in transition, when Jizzle James is throwing lobs, when Dan Skillings is going up and grabbing it. Granted, we didn't get to see Skillings in that game against Villanova. And then when on the break, you're finding Lukosius in the corner. You're theoretically finding Connor Hickman knocking down threes. Hasn't done much of that this season. But that's kind of where you're at your best. You know, blocks, dunks, lobs, the Duncan Bearcats. And that's where I think tempo has a lot to do with this. But pressure-wise, all I can say is every time that I thought Cincinnati has had a pretty good shot in this game, the times that I was very, very confident they were going to win, the few times I think they typically have won, and they've usually been at home. But I thought they were going to win John Brannon's second year when DeJulius and the Madsen twins, that team that was played in front of no fans. I mean, they were up late in the game. They blew that one down the stretch. The next home game that they had at Fifth Third Arena, they had no business winning, but they tied it up late. Again, they lose down the stretch. It's just like every time Xavier is hanging around in this game, they're the tougher team. They're the better team. They seem more skilled basketball-wise, and we thought that would change when Cronin, left and West comes in and he's bringing in a lot more skill guys. But we got to see it, man, because last year it was deer in the headlights minus Jizzle James.
All right, let's talk matchups here because I think Zach Fremantle battling down low is going to be the biggest thing that I circle because certainly Simas Lukosius is an extremely talented shooter. I mean, Simas is shooting 53% from three, which is an outrageous number. He's 28 for 53 from three this year. An incredible shooter, but Xavier fans know him dating back 4 years to his 2 years at Butler to then last year in the shootout to now this year in the shootout. Simas Lukosius is maybe the most familiar name to Xavier fans on this Cincinnati roster. But looking down low in the post at Zach Fremantle, and whether it's Dylan Mitchell or Aziz Bandego or Dan Skillings, whoever it is, what do you think about the battle around the rim?
I think Cincinnati's got to be as athletic as possible. They have to be as nimble as possible. They have to stretch the floor as much as possible or be able to hang around with the Xavier bigs, a.k.a. Fremantle, that will linger. Because correct me if I'm wrong, he's going to step out. Not always going to shoot it, right? But he's going to play short corner. He's going to, right?
Especially from the top of the key. Zach is somebody who kind of sometimes trails the play. He's the one at the top of the key that'll start the ball reversal as they go from wing to wing. He's the man in the middle that'll meet that pass. And he'll also be somebody that from the top of the key, he'll take a three. He's not afraid to step out and take a three. He hasn't shot it particularly well lately, but the Morgan State game, maybe that got him back on track.
The last thing you want, though, is Aziz hovering outside the 3-point line or hanging around out there with trying to hang around in a matchup that does not favor him. I think we need less of Bandego from the Cincinnati side, and you need more of Mitchell at the 5, Skillings at the 4, Lukosius at the 3, Day-Day and Jizzle. You need athletes in there to match Xavier, and I think you need to try and speed up the tempo. Maybe some Cincinnati fans, based on the metrics of what Xavier does well, would disagree with me. But I think Villanova showed everyone the template. Northern Kentucky kind of did as well. When you slow Cincinnati down, you force them really to hit shots, and there's really only one or two guys on the team that consistently can make them. I mean, Skillings doesn't scare you. Mitchell doesn't scare you. Day-Day doesn't scare you. Jizzle don't scare you. Page don't scare you. Aziz, he's a non-threat. I mean, you go up and down the roster. I mean, Betsy's a freshman. You rely on him. Josh Reed's 3-ball hits the Jumbotron. I mean, at a certain point, the shooting that we thought this team had, it's looking like a better shooting team than UC's had in years past. But at the same time, it just appears that the half-court offense is their Achilles heel. UC's best when they're running, they're dunking, they're lobbing, they're doing things that are great. Aziz can help you in that facet, but I just think defensively he can get torched in this game. UC's better off going a little smaller, a little more athletically, and trying to beat Xavier that way. But hey, there's a reason I'm not coaching.
Where do you think Cincinnati has the biggest advantage in this game?
That's tough, man, because every year I always say it's physicality. I say they just are the more athletic team. And then you watch, like I said this way back when UC had Gary Clark, Cumberland, Jacob Evans, that team that went into Cintas Center. And, by the end of the first half, it's alley-oops to Macura. It's freaking Reynolds throwing down tomahawk dunks. And I'm like, we're not the more athletic team. Where did we get this narrative that we're this scrappy, tough, blue-collar team? That's Xavier. We just look like a bunch of guys that are scared that can't play basketball. I know it's a completely different era. It's new coaching. But I just want to see, I think the biggest edge would be that on the offensive glass, where Xavier has been so well is corralling defensive rebounds, right? And ending possessions. What Cincinnati can do with that length of Mitchell, Skillings, they can get a hand on it. They can keep the play alive. That's where a ball's tipped out to Seamas, knocks down a three, fifth third's going crazy. It's a momentum shifter. That's what they need. They need some buckets, and they need them early. I would say Cincinnati's biggest strength in this game, to be honest with you, is the crowd.
All right, Chuck, to wrap this up here, my last question for you. I want a prediction, and I want why.
I mean, it's tough to, if I was a betting man, I would completely stay away from this game. The why in that is just there's something psychologically with the Bearcats in this game. I mean, we talked about it, man, between all the teams that Xavier has played in the Big East over the years. They haven't beaten them 5 in a row. Even DePaul has snuck out one on Xavier, and Cincinnati just cannot get it done. Doesn't matter who the coach is, who the player is. It's kind of the same story every year where they come out, they get blitzed, they look like deers in the headlights, and by the under 16 timeout, they're down 8-2. Fast start needs to be big. With that being said, I was high on Cincinnati pre-Villanova. They've not looked as good since. They did come together a little bit in the second half. They're now fully healthy. I will take Cincinnati in a home win, 81-73.
All right. Charlie Walter, I appreciate it, as always, joining the Rebound Rundown today. Tell us, I talked about Chatterbox Bearcats, but where people can find your stuff. I know you do stuff with the Warriors too. So tell us where everybody can find your stuff.
Yeah, easiest way is just cwalter22. I'm on Instagram. Obviously, Chatterbox Bearcats, at Chatterbox Bearcats on Instagram. We're on YouTube. And then, host Locked On Warriors. That's just Locked On Warriors. You can find us on YouTube with 15,000 loyal subscribers of the Golden State Warriors. We got Steph Curry in the background. And that's always a fun time talking about the former home of Steve Logan for about 5 minutes. And Jacob Evans and Danny Fortson, and the list goes on and on.
Chuck, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for joining the show.
Good stuff. Thanks, Paul.